Stop wasting your money. If you have replaced your tires recently, or you're planning to buy a new set of expensive tires soon, then you have a massive problem hidden underneath your car that is literally chewing up that new rubber, and it will destroy your handling and make your brakes useless the moment you need them most. We are talking about the silent killer of your tires, the shock absorber. If you ignore the 3 hidden signs we're going to show you today, you might as well take the cash you use for those new tires and just throw it out the window right now. What's up, guys? Today, we are diving deep into the one part of your car that everyone forgets about until it's too late. It's not the engine, it's not the brakes, it's the shock absorber. Most people only think about them when their ride gets super bumpy. But the truth is, a failing shock absorber starts destroying your car and risking your life long before you ever feel that first big bump. It is a hidden, worn-out part that is actively turning your vehicle into a danger zone and is the single biggest reason why expensive new tires are ruined after just a few months. Get ready, because we are going to expose the 3 quiet warning signs that your shocks are sending you right now before they completely ruin your money and your safety. The main problem is that we treat our shocks like they are an optional piece of equipment. People look at the shocks, and since the car is still moving, they think, it's fine. It's just a little bouncy. But that little bounce is proof that the most important safety function of your suspension is gone. A shock absorber's job is not just to make the ride comfortable. That's maybe 5% of its job. The other 95% is about control. It's about keeping your tire firmly glued to the road surface at all times, no matter what happens, hitting a pothole, going over a speed bump, or hitting the brakes hard. When a shock absorber is worn out, that tire, which is supposed to be glued to the road, starts doing a tiny little jump every time you hit a bump. Imagine trying to drive a car with one wheel constantly bouncing into the air for a millisecond, then coming back down. That tiny bounce means 2 things are happening. First, when that tire is airborne for even a fraction of a second, you lose all braking power and steering control at that corner of the car. If you are doing 60 miles per hour and hit a small bump, and your tire bounces for half a second, you just traveled maybe 45 feet with zero control. If you have to slam the brakes right then, you are going straight into whatever you were trying to avoid. Your braking distance goes way up, and you are basically in a life or death situation you didn't even know you were in. Second, that constant, uncontrolled up and down movement of the tire is the tire killer. Every time the tire hits the ground again after a bounce, it scrubs off a tiny bit of rubber in a way it's not supposed to. That leads to the first and most obvious sign of trouble, which we are going to dive into right now. But first, you have to understand this. If you buy 4 brand new, expensive tires and you put them on a car with bad shocks, those tires will be destroyed and completely unusable within a year, sometimes even less. The money you spend on the tires will be completely wasted because the bad shocks act like a grinder, relentlessly chewing away at the expensive new rubber. This is the challenge we face, realizing that your suspension is a safety feature, not just a comfort feature, and that ignoring it is the most expensive mistake you can make. We need to get into the details of the 3 biggest warning signs that your shock absorbers are screaming at you. These signs start small, quiet, and cheap to fix, but if you let them go, they turn into a massive repair bill and a serious safety hazard. Pay close attention to these details, because this is where the money is either saved or thrown away. Sign 1. The tire destroyer, uneven or cupping wear. This is the most common and expensive sign of shock failure. If you look closely at your tires, especially the fronts, and you see a pattern of uneven wear, scalloping, or cupping, your shocks are already dead or dying. Now, what is cupping? Imagine the tread pattern of your tire. It looks like a repeating wave pattern on the tread block. When the shock fails, the spring pushes the tire down, and then the tire bounces back up immediately because there is nothing slowing the spring down. This means the tire is no longer maintaining constant contact with the road. Instead, it's hitting the road's surface hard, leaving the road quickly, and then hitting it hard again in a rapid, uncontrolled sequence. Every time that tire slams back down onto the road surface after a bounce, it grinds off a tiny bit of rubber in that spot. But because the bounce is happening in a rhythmic pattern all the way around the tire, you get that wave-like, cupped pattern. The parts that are consistently hitting the road hard wear down fast, while the parts that are momentarily airborne wear down slowly. This creates those dips and scoops. The cost of ignoring this. If you see this pattern on your new tires, they are fundamentally ruined. You cannot fix cupping. You have created a perfect environment for hydroplaning. A cupped tire cannot grip the road evenly, and its tread channels are now too uneven to clear water properly. This means you have to replace those tires way before their time. You are just lighting money on fire. The shock absorber, which might cost you a few $100s, has now cost you the price of the shock plus 2 full sets of expensive tires. This is why you must fix the source of the problem, not just the symptom. Sign 2. The safety killer. Excessive body movement, brake dive, squat, and bouncing. This sign is the one that affects your safety and handling the most, and it's the easiest to test for at home, even if you're not a mechanic. The purpose of the shock absorber is to dampen the spring's movement. If you imagine a toy pogo stick, the spring makes you bounce up and down rapidly. A good shock absorber is essentially the oil inside a tube that acts like resistance, turning that pogo stick into a smooth, controlled compression and release. How to spot it while driving. Brake dive. When you hit the brakes, even moderately hard, the front end of your car should dip slightly and immediately settle down. If your shocks are bad, the front end will dive heavily towards the pavement, almost like a boat tipping forward, and it will stay dipped for too long before slowly coming back up. In an emergency stop, this heavy dive changes the geometry of the suspension so much that it drastically increases your stopping distance. This is where safety is lost. Acceleration squat. The opposite happens when you accelerate quickly. This heavy squat takes the weight off the front tires, which handle the steering. This makes the steering wheel feel light, mushy, and less responsive, especially when you are trying to accelerate around a corner or quickly change lanes. The bounce test, the simplest test. This is the test your grandfather used to do. Park your car on a level surface. Go to one corner, say, the front right fender, and push down hard, putting all your body weight on it, and then release quickly. A healthy, good shock absorber should allow the car to come up, move down once, and then immediately settle. It should not bounce again. If you push down and the car starts bouncing up and down 2, 3, or 4 times before settling, your shock absorber is absolutely dead and useless. That multiple bounce is the spring doing its job without the shock to control it, turning your car into a death trap in an emergency maneuver. If you have to swerve to avoid something, that extra bounce will cause you to lose control entirely. The cost of ignoring this. The cost here is measured in feet. A bad shock can increase your stopping distance by up to 10 to 20%. That extra distance is the length of a few cars. In city traffic or on the highway, that extra length is the difference between avoiding a collision and totaling your car. You cannot put a price tag on that, but we know for a fact that this sign means your car is no longer driving safely or stopping efficiently. Sign 3. The financial killer, visual signs and noises. The third sign often involves visible proof and audible warnings that you should never ignore. This is where the shock goes from dying to being fully dead. Visual inspection, the leak. A shock absorber works because it contains hydraulic oil and sometimes gas. The entire dampening function depends on this fluid. If the area around the rod, where the shock slides up and down, looks wet, greasy, or slimy, especially if there's dirt sticking to the oil residue, that shock is leaking. The simple truth, once the oil leaks out, the resistance is gone. It's like having an empty bottle where there should be hydraulic fluid. The shock is completely ineffective, and all the problems mentioned above, cupping, bouncing, poor braking, are now happening at their worst. A small bit of dust or dirt might be normal, but any visible liquid or heavy greasiness is a guaranteed sign of failure. Do not mistake road grime for oil, but if you wipe it and it smells slightly oily or is clearly slippery, the shock is compromised. You will start hearing loud, distinct noises. Clunking over bumps. When you go over a pothole or speed bump, a broken shock mount can lead to a loud, metallic clunking noise coming from that corner of the car. This is the metal-on-metal impact of the shock body or the spring hitting the frame because the mounting bushings have failed. This is a severe problem because the shock is now loose and can shift positions, potentially leading to immediate control issues. Excessive squeaking/rattling. While squeaking is often the result of worn bushings or ball joints, a constant rattling or rhythmic thudding from the suspension, especially when driving over uneven pavement, can be caused by the shock absorber's internal valve components breaking or the piston rod moving too freely inside the cylinder. This is the sound of the shock absorber completely failing its internal duty. The cost of ignoring this: when the shock breaks a mount, the metal part holding it to the frame, the entire structure of your suspension is at risk. Not only is the shock no longer working, but the broken component can cause damage to other expensive parts, like the coil spring, the control arm, or the axle itself. What started as a cheap shock replacement job turns into a complex and very expensive full suspension repair. This is the financial killer. Fix the noise immediately before the broken part takes out 3 other, more expensive parts. We've covered the 3 signs: the cupping wear, the tire killer, the brake dive, the safety killer, and the leaking oil/clunking sound, the financial killer. It is in the middle of a sharp, high-speed corner or during an unexpected emergency break in the rain. When you hit a tight corner at speed, the weight of the car dramatically shifts to the outside wheels. When your shock is dead, it can't handle that weight shift. The suspension compresses too quickly and too deeply. The tire is compressed, but the spring is still bouncing, causing the tire to momentarily lose maximum grip. In that moment, your car experiences massive body roll. It tilts over violently, and the weight bounces back quickly, unsettling the car and often causing the driver to overcorrect. This instability means you have a high chance of spinning out or completely losing control. This is the key moment. A bad shock doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It creates a delayed response in your steering and braking system. You turn the wheel, and the car takes an extra second to settle and respond because it's still bouncing from the last input. You brake, and the car takes an extra second and an extra 20 feet to settle before stopping. This delay is the killer. Do not wait for a mechanic to tell you your shocks are bad. Check for the cupping, check for the bounce, and check for the grease. Your life depends on knowing those 3 signs. So, here's what you need to remember from this deep dive. A shock absorber's main job is not comfort, it's control. Ignoring a failed shock is the most expensive thing you can do to your car, period. You are literally destroying expensive, brand new tires through cupping and uneven wear. And worst of all, you are adding critical distance to your emergency stopping capability and making your car unstable in corners. Do not let your shocks destroy your new tires. Go check your tires right now for cupping and scalloping. Do the bounce test, push down hard, and release. If it bounces more than once, it's dead. Fixing this now is much cheaper than replacing a set of tires or, worse, dealing with the consequences of an accident.